Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey into one of humanity's most enduring mysteries, a story that has captivated philosophers, historians, and dreamers for more than 2,000 years. We'll explore the legend of Atlantis, not as mere myth, but as a geographical and archaeological possibility that could rewrite our understanding of human civilization's origins. This is an investigation of lost lands, ancient cataclysms, and the possibility that our collective memory preserves fragments of a world that vanished beneath the waves. We will delve deep into Plato's original account, examine the geological evidence for lost continents, analyze archaeological correlations from around the world, explore the most compelling modern theories, and finally contemplate what this enduring myth reveals about humanity itself. This comprehensive exploration will span the depths of our oceans and the breadth of human imagination, seeking answers to questions that have haunted us for millennia. So, before you settle in, if you're finding comfort in these explorations of Earth's deep mysteries, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We would also love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to connect with our global community of curious minds who share this fascination with history's greatest enigmas. Your engagement helps support this channel and allows us to continue producing these deep dives into geography's most compelling stories. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's speculative journey together. Allow the outside world to fade away as we travel back through time, across oceans, and into the realm of what might have been. You are sitting in the shaded groves of academia, outside the walls of Athens, in the year 360 BC. The air is warm and scented with olive trees and philosophical discourse. Before you, the philosopher Plato is recounting a story told to his ancestor Solon by Egyptian priests at Sais, a story of a mighty civilization that existed 9,000 years before their time, on an island beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This island, called Atlantis, was larger than Libya and Asia combined, with concentric rings of water and land, magnificent architecture, and advanced engineering. Its people had tamed elephants, built canals and irrigation systems, and created a society of unprecedented sophistication. But their ambition grew too great, and in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, the entire island sank beneath the ocean, vanishing forever. As you listen, you realize this is no ordinary myth. Plato presents it with specific details, precise measurements, and a historical framework that suggests he wants his audience to understand this as actual history, not mere allegory. Plato's account in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias provides our only primary source for Atlantis, presented not as myth, but as historical fact passed down through generations. The description is remarkably detailed for an alleged fiction. The island's dimensions, its capital city's layout with concentric rings of water and land connected by bridges and tunnels, its sophisticated agriculture supported by an extensive irrigation system, its mineral wealth including the mysterious orichalcum metal that gleamed like fire, and its social structure with 10 kingdoms ruled by a confederation of monarchs. Most intriguingly, Plato gives a specific time frame, 9,000 years before Solon's visit to Egypt around 600 BCE, placing Atlantis' downfall approximately 11,600 years ago, coinciding with the end of the last ice age and a period of dramatic sea level rise known as the Meltwater Pulse 1b. This precise dating is particularly significant because it places Atlantis' existence and destruction in a very specific geological epoch when sea levels were rising rapidly, coastal landscapes were changing dramatically, and human communities would have been forced to adapt or perish. The geographical clues in Plato's account are particularly fascinating and have been analyzed exhaustively by scholars for centuries. He locates Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which the ancient Greeks identified as the Strait of Gibraltar. This would place it somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. He describes its position as facing a region called Gadira, modern Cadiz in Spain, and mentions that from Atlantis, one could access other islands and from there the whole opposite continent, a possible reference to the Americas. The island itself is described as having a great plain measuring 3,000 by 2,000 stadia, approximately 530 by 350 kilometers, oriented toward the south and sheltered from northern winds by high mountains. These specific details suggest either an astonishingly elaborate fiction or a genuine geographical memory preserved across millennia. The description of the capital city with its concentric rings of water and land has particularly fascinated researchers, as it suggests sophisticated engineering and urban planning that would be remarkable for any prehistoric civilization. The philosophical context of Atlantis' story is crucial to understanding why Plato might have included it in his dialogues. In both Timaeus and Critias, the tale serves as a moral lesson about the dangers of imperial overreach and spiritual decay. The Atlanteans begin as virtuous, spiritually advanced people living in harmony with their environment and their gods. But over generations, their divine nature becomes diluted with mortal ambition, and they become greedy, arrogant, and militaristic. They attempt to conquer the entire Mediterranean world, but are defeated by the virtuous Athenians of that prehistoric era. Shortly thereafter, Zeus punishes their hubris by destroying their civilization in a cataclysmic event. For Plato, the story served as a warning about the cycle of civilizations and the moral qualities necessary to maintain a just society. It was part of his broader philosophical project to imagine ideal states and understand what causes them to flourish or fail. The transmission of the story through Egyptian priests adds another layer of intrigue and potential credibility. Egypt was renowned in the ancient world for its extraordinary continuity and preservation of records. While Greek cities experienced waves of destruction and periods of illiteracy during what historians would later call the Greek Dark Ages, Egyptian temple complexes maintained written records for thousands of years relatively undisturbed. The priest at Sais tells Solon that the Greeks are like children without memory of their deep past, while Egypt has preserved records of events that other cultures have forgotten. This framing suggests that Plato wanted his audience to understand the Atlantis story not as mere legend, but as historical fact preserved by the most reliable record keepers of the ancient world. The Egyptians were known to have recorded events going back thousands of years, and their calendar system dated back to what they believed was the beginning of civilization itself. The literary structure of Plato's account also deserves careful analysis. Unlike his other myths, which are presented clearly as allegories, the Atlantis story is embedded in what appears to be historical narrative. Plato provides specific names of characters, precise dates, and geographical descriptions that would be unusual for a purely invented tale. He also frames it as part of a larger discussion about the nature of the universe and human society in Timaeus, and as a precursor to his discussion of ideal governance in Critias. Some scholars have suggested that Plato may have been using a historical tradition to lend weight to his philosophical arguments, while others believe he may have invented the story whole cloth as a rhetorical device. The fact that he never completed Critias, breaking off mid-sentence during his description of Atlantis, has led to endless speculation about whether he abandoned the project because he recognized problems with the story or simply never finished it for other reasons. The historical context in which Plato wrote is also significant for understanding how his original audience might have received the Atlantis story. The 4th century BCE was a time of political turmoil and philosophical questioning in Athens. The city-state had been defeated by Sparta in the Peloponnesian War, its democracy had been overthrown and restored, and it was struggling to maintain its independence against the rising power of Macedon. In this context, a story about a magnificent civilization that fell due to its own hubris would have had particular resonance. Plato's Academy was engaged in fundamental questions about governance, ethics, and the nature of reality, and the Atlantis story served as a powerful illustration of his philosophical concerns about the relationship between virtue, power, and civilizational longevity. The concept of a lost civilization requires a lost landmass to support it, and modern geology provides fascinating possibilities for real-world locations that might have inspired the Atlantis legend. During the last ice age, when sea levels were more than 120 meters lower than today, significant land areas now submerged would have been exposed and potentially habitable. The most dramatic of these was the Dogger Land Bridge between Britain and continental Europe, but more relevant to Atlantis is the potential landscape around the Gibraltar Strait and the Azores Plateau. Understanding these geological contexts is essential for evaluating whether Atlantis could have existed as Plato described. The Azores Plateau in the mid-Atlantic has long fascinated Atlantologists and geologists alike. This extensive underwater plateau, roughly the size of Spain, lies at the intersection of three tectonic plates, the North American, Eurasian, and African plates. While most of the plateau is now 1,000 to 2,000 meters below sea level, geological evidence suggests that during the last glacial maximum, parts of it may have been only a few hundred meters deep, with some volcanic peaks forming significant islands. Core samples from the plateau have revealed evidence of submerged beach sand and other shallow water deposits, suggesting that sea levels have indeed changed dramatically in this region. The plateau's volcanic nature means it has experienced significant geological change over time, with some areas rising while others subsided. In 2013, Portuguese scientists announced the discovery of a large underwater pyramid-like structure near the Azores, though most experts remain skeptical of its artificial origin, attributing it to natural geological processes. Nevertheless, the Azores region remains geologically active and continues to be studied for insights into how landforms change with rising sea levels and tectonic activity. Another compelling geological candidate is the Spartel Bank, a submerged island located just west of the Strait of Gibraltar in the Gulf of Cadiz. During the last ice age, when sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today, Spartel would have been a substantial island, possibly several kilometers across with fertile land and fresh water sources. Geological surveys have shown that the area is seismically active and has experienced significant subsidence and tsunami events throughout history. Around 12,000 years ago, a major tectonic event or series of events could have caused Spartel Island to sink beneath the waves. This location matches Plato's description of being beyond the Pillars of Hercules, while still being accessible to ancient Mediterranean sailors. The proximity to the Strait of Gibraltar also makes it plausible that knowledge of this island's existence and eventual destruction could have been preserved in Mediterranean cultural memory and eventually transmitted to Plato through Egyptian sources. The mechanism for Atlantis' destruction described by Plato, earthquakes and floods, aligns remarkably well with known geological phenomena in the Atlantic region. The Azores-Gibraltar Transform Fault is a seismically active zone capable of generating massive earthquakes and tsunamis. Historical records and geological evidence show that this region has experienced significant seismic events throughout human history. The Storegga slide off the coast of Norway around 6100 BC generated a tsunami that reached heights of 20 meters in some areas and would have devastated coastal settlements across the North Atlantic. Similar but earlier events could have inspired the Atlantis legend. The The concept of catastrophic land subsidence is also geologically plausible. The sudden sinking of large land areas has occurred throughout Earth's history, most notably with the Zanclean flood that refilled the Mediterranean basin 5.3 million years ago, but smaller-scale events could have happened within human memory. The geological record shows numerous examples of relatively rapid land level changes caused by tectonic activity, isostatic adjustment, or other geophysical processes. The timing of Atlantis' supposed destruction around 9600 BC coincides with a period of dramatic climate change at the end of the Younger Dryas Cold period. The meltwater pulse 1b around 11,500 to 11,000 years ago saw sea levels rise rapidly by approximately 14 to 18 meters over just 500 years, inundating coastal areas worldwide at a rate of about 2 to 3 centimeters per year. For Neolithic communities living in low-lying coastal areas or on islands, this would have been a perceptible and terrifying process, with shorelines retreating visibly within a single lifetime. The memory of such loss could have been preserved through oral traditions for thousands of years before being recorded by Plato. Recent research into the Black Sea deluge hypothesis suggests a catastrophic flooding event around 5600 BCE that may have displaced early agricultural communities and been preserved in flood myths across multiple cultures. Similar events could have occurred in the Atlantic region, with rising sea levels gradually inundating coastal areas and islands over centuries, creating a cultural memory of lands lost beneath the waves. The geological evidence for past land bridges and submerged landscapes continues to grow as technology improves. Sophisticated sonar mapping of the seafloor has revealed ancient river valleys, submerged shorelines, and other features that indicate where land once existed above water. Core samples from ocean sediments contain pollen, fossils, and other evidence of terrestrial environments now deep underwater. While no evidence of a civilization on the scale described by Plato has been found on these submerged landscapes, the geological record confirms that significant areas of what are now continental shelves were dry land during the last ice age and would have been available for human occupation. The rising sea levels that followed the glacial maximum did not happen smoothly, but in a series of rapid pulses separated by periods of relative stability, creating opportunities for human adaptation but also causing catastrophic flooding events that would have been memorable to those who experienced them. If Atlantis represented a real civilization lost to rising seas, we might expect to find echoes of its memory in the myths and archaeological records of ancient cultures worldwide. Surprisingly, flood myths are among the most universal narrative archetypes across human cultures, appearing in Mesopotamian, Greek, Hindu, Chinese, Mesoamerican, and Native American traditions, among others. The details often share remarkable similarities: divine punishment for human transgressions, warning given to a virtuous individual, survival in a boat or ark, and the rebirth of civilization from few survivors. This global pattern of flood narratives suggests either a shared psychological archetype or a common memory of actual catastrophic flooding events at the end of the last ice age. The most famous parallel is the Mesopotamian flood myth recorded in the Epic of Gilgamesh and later adapted into the biblical story of Noah. But more intriguing for Atlantis researchers is the Deucalion flood in Greek mythology, which bears similarities to Plato's account. The ancient Egyptians also recorded a tradition of a former age of primeval gods before the pharaohs, and the Edfu building texts speak of homeland, islands that were destroyed by flood, from which survivors brought advanced knowledge to Egypt. Could these represent distant memories of actual events? The consistency of these stories across cultures that had little contact with each other suggests either a common human psychological response to the threat of flooding or a shared memory of actual events that affected human populations globally during the period of rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. Archaeological evidence from the end of the last ice age reveals a dramatic transformation in human societies that might correspond to the Atlantis timeline. The Neolithic Revolution, the transition from hunter-gatherer lifestyles to agriculture and settled life, occurred relatively suddenly around 9600 BCE in multiple locations, including the Fertile Crescent, China, and Mesoamerica. Mainstream archaeology explains this as independent development, but the Atlantis hypothesis suggests an alternative possibility, that agriculture and civilization were not invented independently, but were inspired by contact with a more advanced culture that was subsequently lost to rising seas. The simultaneous emergence of agriculture in multiple regions could be explained by the dispersal of knowledge and technologies from a central source that was destroyed by rising waters, forcing survivors to bring their knowledge to different parts of the world. The most compelling archaeological correlation might be the ancient site of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, dating to around 9600 BCE, exactly the time Plato gives for Atlantis' destruction. This sophisticated stone temple complex, with its massive carved pillars and precise astronomical alignments, was built by pre-agricultural people, challenging conventional theories about the development of civilization. The builders of Göbekli Tepe appear to have had knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and symbolic communication that we would not expect from hunter-gatherers. The site was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE, preserving it for millennia, but also raising questions about why its builders went to such effort to conceal it. Could they have been influenced by, or even refugees from, a lost advanced civilization? The timing is certainly suggestive, and the sophistication of the site continues to challenge our understanding of Neolithic capabilities. Other archaeological mysteries from this period include the submerged settlement of At Yam off the coast of Israel, dating to around 7000 BCE, which features sophisticated stone construction, water wells, and evidence of agriculture, all while sea levels were still rising. Similar submerged sites have been found off India's coast, in the Baltic Sea, and in the Americas. While none match Plato's description of Atlantis exactly, they demonstrate that indeed, many coastal settlements from the early Holocene period now lie beneath the waves, their stories lost to history, but perhaps preserved in myth. The recent discovery of extensive megalithic structures beneath the waters off western Cuba, at depths suggesting submergence during meltwater pulses, continues to fuel speculation about possible lost civilizations. These underwater sites remind us that much of human history may be literally submerged, waiting to be discovered or forever lost to the rising seas that followed the last ice age. The archaeological record also shows evidence of sophisticated seafaring capabilities much earlier than previously believed. Evidence from Crete shows that humans reached the island by sea at least 130,000 years ago, challenging the notion that early humans were limited in their maritime abilities. The settlement of Australia more than 65,000 years ago required crossing open water, demonstrating that even prehistoric humans had the capacity for significant sea voyages. If humans could cross open water tens of thousands of years ago, it is certainly plausible that they could have established settlements on islands in the Atlantic during a last ice age, when sea levels were lower and islands were more numerous and larger. The disappearance of these islands beneath rising seas could have entered cultural memory as stories of lost lands, eventually evolving into the Atlantis legend recorded by Plato. As our story continues to unfold, we would be fascinated to know where you are joining us from on this journey through ancient mysteries. Feel free to share your location and the time there in the comments below. What has been the most striking idea for you so far, Plato's detailed account, the geological possibilities, or the archaeological correlations? Let us know. Your perspective helps shape our community and our future explorations. Now, Let the mystery of lost civilizations and ancient memories settle your mind. The possibility that our past may be deeper and more complex than we imagine can be a comforting thought, a reminder that human history holds endless surprises. As you relax further into this narrative, allow yourself to contemplate what might lie hidden beneath the waves of time. Let that sense of wonder ease you deeper into the story. The most academically respected theory regarding Atlantis centers not on the Atlantic Ocean but on the Aegean Sea, and not on a timeline of 11,600 years, but approximately 3,600 years ago. This theory posits that Plato's story of Atlantis actually describes the Minoan civilization centered on Crete and the catastrophic eruption of Thera, modern Santorini, around 1600 BCE. The evidence for this connection is compelling in its geographical and cultural parallels, if not its chronological alignment, and represents the most scientifically grounded interpretation of the Atlantis myth within mainstream archaeology. The Minoan civilization was, for its time, remarkably advanced and would have seemed legendary to later Greeks. Centered on Crete with trading posts throughout the Aegean, the Minoans built elaborate palace complexes with sophisticated plumbing systems that included flush toilets, running water, and intricate drainage systems. They created beautiful frescoes depicting sophisticated scenes of nature and human activity, produced exquisite pottery using advanced techniques, developed a writing system, Linear A, that remains undeciphered, and maintained a maritime empire that dominated the eastern Mediterranean for centuries. Their capital at Knossos featured complex multi-story buildings with central courtyards, storage magazines for agricultural surplus, and architectural features that might have inspired Plato's description of Atlantis's palatial architecture. The Minoans were suddenly and catastrophically weakened around 1600 BCE, precisely when the volcanic island of Thera exploded in one of the largest eruptions in human history, creating a disaster of unimaginable proportions that would have been remembered for generations. The Thera eruption was a cataclysm that reshaped the Mediterranean world. The volcanic explosion was estimated to be 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa's 1883 eruption, with the sound likely heard across Africa and Europe. The eruption column may have reached 40 kilometers into the atmosphere, darkening skies across the region. Tsunamis generated by the collapse of the volcanic caldera would have reached heights of 35 meters or more, devastating coastal settlements across the eastern Mediterranean. Archaeological evidence from Crete shows damage consistent with tsunami impacts, including building destruction and marine deposits far inland. Ash falls blanketed the region, with deposits found as far away as the Black Sea and Nile Delta, in some places reaching thicknesses of over 50 meters near the eruption site. The climatic effects likely caused years of cooler temperatures and failed harvests across the northern hemisphere, with tree-ring evidence suggesting several years of stunted growth following the eruption. For any civilization in the region, this would indeed have seemed like the world ending in fire and water, exactly as Plato described. The geographical match between Thera/Santorini and Plato's description is intriguing and has been extensively studied. Before the eruption, Thera was a single island with a central volcano, possibly surrounded by smaller islands, a configuration that could have been remembered as the concentric rings of water and land that Plato described. The caldera that formed after the eruption creates the modern archipelago of Santorini, with its central islands surrounded by deep water and the remnants of the original island forming a ring around them. Archaeological excavations at Akrotiri on Thera have revealed an advanced Bronze Age settlement frozen in time by volcanic ash, complete with multi-story buildings, sophisticated drainage systems, beautiful frescoes depicting sophisticated maritime culture, and evidence of extensive trade networks, all hallmarks of an advanced culture suddenly destroyed. The Minoan civilization on Crete, though not completely destroyed, never recovered its former glory after the eruption, eventually falling to Mycenaean invaders from mainland Greece. This pattern of a sophisticated maritime power suddenly weakened by natural catastrophe and then conquered by outsiders fits well with Plato's narrative. The chronological discrepancy between the Thera eruption, 1600 BCE, and Plato's timeline, 9600 BCE, represents the greatest challenge to this theory, but may be explainable through several mechanisms. Proponents suggest that either Plato or his sources multiplied the dates by a factor of 10, a common error in converting between different calendrical systems or in copying manuscripts. Alternatively, the story may have accumulated elements from different time periods during its long oral transmission, with the dramatic Thera catastrophe being grafted onto older traditions of land lost to rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. The Egyptian priests who told Solon the story might have combined memories of the Thera event with even older traditions, creating a composite narrative that spanned different epochs. This layering of different historical events into a single narrative would not be unusual for mythological traditions, which often compress time and combine elements from different periods to create more powerful stories. The dramatic nature of the Thera eruption and its impact on Mediterranean civilizations makes it a compelling candidate for a historical event that could have been preserved in cultural memory and incorporated into Plato's philosophical narrative. Beyond the Atlantic Ocean and Aegean Sea hypotheses, more than 50 other locations have been proposed for Atlantis throughout history, each with its own evidence and advocates. These theories range from the plausible to the fantastical, reflecting humanity's enduring fascination with the idea of a lost golden age. Each proposed location tells us as much about the time period in which it was proposed as it does about Atlantis itself, revealing the changing concerns and knowledge of different eras while demonstrating the remarkable flexibility of this ancient story. The Caribbean and Bahamas have been suggested as possible locations, particularly since the 1960s when divers discovered what appeared to be architectural structures near Bimini, the so-called Bimini Road. While most geologists identify these formations as natural beach rock, the theory gained traction through writers like Charles Berlitz and Ignatius Donnelly, who proposed connections between Atlantis and Maya/Aztec traditions. Some have suggested that Plato's opposite continent, accessible via Atlantis, was actually the Americas, and that the destruction of Atlantis explains why Old and New World civilizations developed in isolation until Columbus. The discovery of possible underwater structures off the coast of Cuba in 2001 renewed interest in this theory, though subsequent investigations have been inconclusive. The timing of these proposals during the peak of interest in ancient astronauts and alternative archaeology in the late 20th century reflects how Atlantis theories often mirror contemporary cultural interests. Another cluster of theories places Atlantis in the Mediterranean itself, but at different locations. Sardinia has been proposed due to its sophisticated Nuric culture and evidence of catastrophic flooding around 1200 BCE. The Nuraghi are ancient stone towers dating back to the Bronze Age, with over 7,000 scattered across the island, suggesting a complex and organized society. Malta's megalithic temples, some of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, have been suggested as possible Atlantean remnants. These temples, dating back to 3600 BCE, show remarkable architectural sophistication and astronomical alignment. Cyprus, with its rich copper deposits, possibly the origin of Plato's orichalcum, has also been considered. The Maltese and Sardinian theories are particularly interesting because both islands show evidence of having been larger and connected to other land masses during lower sea levels, and both experienced significant cultural declines that could have been remembered as catastrophic events. More speculative theories have placed Atlantis in Antarctica, suggesting polar shift moved it from temperate to frozen conditions. In the Black Sea, connecting with flood theories about the biblical deluge, or even in space as an alien colony. The 19th century mystic Madame Blavatsky incorporated Atlantis into her theosophical system as the home of the fourth root race, while Nazi occultists sought Atlantean origins for the Aryan race. These more fantastical theories, though lacking scientific basis, demonstrate the powerful hold that the Atlantis story has on the human imagination and its ability to adapt to different cultural contexts. The emptiness at the heart of the Atlantis myth, the lack of definitive evidence, allows it to be filled with whatever meaning we need it to carry, making it a perfect vehicle for cultural projection and speculation. The diversity of Atlantis theories reveals something important about how we approach ancient mysteries and our own past. We tend to project our own concerns and knowledge onto the blank slate of the past, using ancient stories to address contemporary anxieties. In the 19th century, when imperialism was at its height, Atlantis was often imagined as a colonial empire that spread civilization but fell due to overextension. During the Cold War, it became a warning about nuclear annihilation and technological hubris. Today, in an age concerned with climate change and rising sea levels, Atlantis resonates as a story of ecological hubris and civilizational collapse. The enduring power of the Atlantis myth may lie not in its historical reality, but in its flexibility as a narrative that can be adapted to address the pressing concerns of every generation while satisfying our deep need for stories about origins, catastrophe, and lost wisdom. In recent decades, the search for Atlantis has moved from amateur speculation to legitimate scientific investigation, using advanced technologies to explore the possibility of lost civilizations on submerged continental shelves. Oceanography, satellite imaging, and underwater archaeology have provided new tools for investigating what was once purely theoretical. While no definitive evidence of Atlantis has been found, these investigations have revealed that human history along coastlines is far more complex than previously believed, with many settlements now underwater that could have inspired flood myths and stories of lost lands. Satellite archaeology and remote sensing have revolutionized the search for submerged sites and transformed our understanding of ancient landscapes. The use of side-scan sonar, multi-beam bathymetry, and sub-bottom profiling has allowed researchers to map the seafloor with unprecedented detail, revealing ancient river valleys, submerged shorelines, and other features that indicate where land once existed above water. In 2001, purported images of rectangular features on the seafloor north of Cuba generated excitement, though most scientists concluded these were natural geological formations. Similar claims have been made for structures off the coast of India, Japan, and Micronesia. While most turn out to be natural, the very fact that we can now identify and investigate such features represents a significant advance over earlier generations of Atlantologists. Satellite altimetry has also revealed patterns on the ocean surface that correspond to underwater features, allowing researchers to identify potential areas of interest for further investigation. These technologies continue to improve, providing ever more detailed views of the submerged landscape. Underwater archaeology has developed into a sophisticated discipline that systematically explores submerged landscapes, particularly those flooded by rising sea levels after the last ice age. The discovery of sites like Doggerland in the North Sea, which was dry land until about 8,000 years ago and covered an area larger than modern Britain, has demonstrated that extensive human occupation of now submerged areas did occur. While nothing on the scale of Plato's Atlantis has been found, The discovery of sophisticated structures like the submerged monolith at the Pantelleria of Beccubank off Italy shows that our ancestors did build significant structures in areas that are now underwater. These findings suggest that many coastal settlements from the early Holocene remain to be discovered, and that our understanding of prehistoric human settlement is incomplete due to the flooding of continental shelves. The recent discovery of a 7,000-year-old road submerged off the coast of Croatia illustrates how much history may be hidden beneath the waves, waiting for technology and methodology to advance enough to properly study it. Perhaps the most promising scientific approach to the Atlantis question involves paleoclimatology and the study of ancient sea level changes. By coring sediments from ocean floors and studying ancient shorelines, scientists have reconstructed detailed timelines of how and when land was lost to rising seas. We now know that the meltwater pulses at the end of the last ice age were not gradual but occurred in rapid surges that would have dramatically transformed coastlines within human lifetimes. The memory of these catastrophic flooding events could easily have been preserved in oral traditions for thousands of years before being recorded in writing. While this doesn't prove Atlantis existed, it establishes that the type of catastrophe described by Plato did occur in human prehistory, and that many coastal settlements were indeed lost to rising seas. The dating of these events corresponds roughly to the timeline Plato provides, adding a layer of plausibility to his account even if the specific details of Atlantis remain unverified. Genetic studies have also contributed to the question of lost civilizations by tracing human migration patterns and cultural diffusion. The relatively new field of archaeogenetics has revealed complex patterns of population movement, interaction, and replacement that were previously unknown. While no genetic evidence has been found for a distinct Atlantean population, studies have shown that the end of the last ice age was a period of significant human migration and cultural exchange, possibly driven by changing climate and sea levels. The spread of agricultural technologies from the Near East to Europe, for example, appears to have involved both migration and cultural diffusion, a process that could have been influenced by displaced populations from coastal areas inundated by rising seas. These genetic studies don't prove the existence of Atlantis, but they do show that human populations were more mobile and interconnected in prehistory than previously believed, and that major environmental changes like rising sea levels could have driven significant cultural and population movements. As our investigation continues to unfold, we would be fascinated to know where you're joining us from on this journey through scientific exploration. Feel free to share your location and the time there in the comments below. What has been the most striking idea for you so far? The satellite imaging technologies, the underwater archaeological discoveries, or the genetic research? Let us know. Your perspective helps shape our community and our future explorations. Now, let the methodical patience of scientific inquiries settle your mind. The gradual accumulation of evidence, the testing of hypotheses, the revision of theories, this is how humanity moves closer to truth, whether about Atlantis or any other mystery. The process itself can be a source of comfort, a reminder that curiosity coupled with rigor can illuminate even the darkest corners of our past. Carry this thoughtful perspective with you as we move toward the final stages of our investigation. We arrive now at the final dimension of our exploration, not the geographical location or historical reality of Atlantis, but its meaning as a cultural and psychological phenomenon. Why has this story endured for millennia when countless other myths have faded into obscurity? What does our perpetual fascination with the lost advanced civilization reveal about us as a species? The true significance of Atlantis may lie not in its existence as a place, but in its function as a mirror reflecting our deepest hopes, fears, and questions about civilization itself. This final section explores why this ancient story continues to resonate across cultures and centuries, and what it tells us about humanity's relationship with its own past and future. To our dedicated listeners who have journeyed with us through geological theories and archaeological evidence, we thank you for your thoughtful engagement. If this exploration of humanity's enduring mysteries has offered you new perspectives, please help others discover these conversations by liking and subscribing. We continue to be amazed by the global reach of our community, from students in Tokyo to night owls in Buenos Aires. Your diverse perspectives make this investigation richer. Share which aspects of the Atlantis myth speak most deeply to you. Does it represent a warning, a lost ideal, or something else entirely? Now, let the philosophical dimensions of this ancient mystery fill the space around you. Settle in, breathe deeply, and let us contemplate what Atlantis means to the human spirit. The enduring power of the Atlantis story suggests it touches something fundamental in the human psyche, something that transcends its specific details as recorded by Plato. From a psychological perspective, Atlantis functions as what Carl Jung would call an archetype, a universal, primordial image that resides in the collective unconscious of humanity. As an archetype, Atlantis represents the lost paradise, the golden age, the idealized civilization that existed before some fundamental fall from grace. This archetype appears in virtually every culture in various forms: the Garden of Eden, Dilmun in Sumerian myth, the Hyperboreans in Greek tradition, Avalon in Arthurian legend, and countless others. These stories share common elements of a perfect beginning, a catastrophic fall, and the hope of eventual restoration, suggesting they address deep psychological needs that are universal to the human experience. The appeal of the lost civilization archetype may stem from several deep psychological needs that have evolved throughout human history. It offers an explanation for the imperfection and suffering of our current world by positing a time when things were better, providing a narrative framework for understanding why our reality falls short of our ideals. It provides comfort by suggesting that humanity once achieved greatness and could do so again, offering hope for the future based on imagined past glories. It also serves as a warning about hubris and the fragility of civilization, themes that resonate particularly strongly in times of social anxiety or environmental concern. The submergence of Atlantis beneath the waves makes it simultaneously inaccessible and thus immune to disproof, and ever-present as a possibility just beyond our reach, much like the unconscious mind itself, which influences us profoundly while remaining largely hidden from direct examination. The timing of the various waves of Atlantis fascination throughout history is revealing and demonstrates how each era reinvents the myth to address its particular concerns. The story was largely ignored during the Middle Ages, when Christian theology focused on biblical history rather than classical traditions, but was rediscovered during the Renaissance, when humanists were looking for classical precedents for their own rediscovery of knowledge and artistic achievement. It gained particular traction during the 19th century, an era of rapid technological change and colonial expansion, when Europeans were both confident in their civilizational superiority and anxious about its stability. In our own time, concerns about climate change and rising sea levels have given the Atlantis story new relevance as a cautionary tale about environmental hubris and ecological collapse. Each generation finds new meaning in the ancient story, adapting it to address contemporary anxieties while preserving its core narrative of rise, hubris, and fall. From a psychoanalytic perspective, the submersion of Atlantis might represent psychological repression, the process by which uncomfortable memories, impulses, or aspects of ourselves are pushed into the unconscious. The advanced but ultimately flawed Atlantean civilization could symbolize aspects of human nature that we have rejected or forgotten, but that continue to influence us from beneath the surface of awareness. The quest to find Atlantis then becomes a form of psychoarchaeology, an attempt to recover lost parts of ourselves and our history that have been submerged but not destroyed. This psychological dimension helps explain why the myth continues to fascinate even in the absence of concrete evidence. It speaks to something deep within us that recognizes the pattern of achievement, overreach, catastrophe, and the enduring hope of recovery and redemption. The story gives narrative form to our sense that there is more to human potential than we currently realize, and that some crucial knowledge or ability has been lost that could transform our present condition. The Atlantis legend has exerted a profound influence on Western culture and thought far beyond the realm of speculative history. It has inspired literature, art, music, film, and even political and philosophical movements. This cultural impact represents a different kind of evidence for Atlantis' reality, not as a physical place, but as a powerful idea that has shaped human creativity and imagination for millennia. This story's adaptability to different media and genres demonstrates its fundamental narrative power and its ability to speak to changing cultural concerns while maintaining its essential themes. In literature, Atlantis has appeared in works ranging from Francis Bacon's utopian novel New Atlantis, 1627, to Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1870, to modern science fiction and fantasy. Each generation reimagines Atlantis according to its own concerns. For Bacon, it was a vision of scientific progress and organized knowledge. For Verne, it was an opportunity for adventure and wonder in the context of 19th century exploration. For modern writers, it often becomes a warning about technological hubris or environmental disaster. The myth has proven remarkably adaptable, capable of supporting multiple interpretations and genres while maintaining its core identity. In the 20th century, Atlantis became a staple of pulp fiction and comic books, often portrayed as the source of advanced technology or supernatural powers. More recently, it has appeared in serious literary fiction as a metaphor for various forms of cultural or personal loss, demonstrating its continued relevance across the literary spectrum. The arts have drawn endless inspiration from the Atlantis theme across multiple forms and media. Musical compositions like Manuel de Falla's El Retablo de Maese Pedro, 1923, and popular songs like Donovan's Atlantis, 1968, have kept the myth alive in the cultural imagination. Classical composers have used the theme to explore ideas of grandeur and loss, while popular musicians have adapted it to contemporary concerns. Visual artists from Salvador Dali to contemporary digital artists have depicted their visions of the lost civilization, each interpretation reflecting the artistic styles and concerns of its period. Dali's surrealist paintings used Atlantis as a symbol of submerged consciousness, while modern digital artists often portray it as an ecologically advanced society that failed to heed warning signs. In cinema, Atlantis has appeared in everything from Disney animated films to serious documentaries, each interpretation reflecting the concerns and aesthetic sensibilities of its time. The recent trend toward environmental themes in Atlantis films reflects contemporary anxieties about climate change and sea level rise, showing how the myth continues to evolve. Perhaps most interestingly, the Atlantis idea has influenced actual scientific and philosophical thought in ways that extend beyond mere speculation. The concept of a lost advanced civilization prompted early investigations into human antiquity and contributed to the development of archaeology as a discipline. The search for Atlantis encouraged the exploration of ocean depths and the development of marine archaeology and underwater exploration technologies. Even if Plato's specific account proves fictional, The questions it raised about cultural memory, catastrophic change, and the rise and fall of civilizations have stimulated genuine scientific inquiry that has expanded our understanding of human history and Earth's processes. Philosophers have used the Atlantis story to explore questions about the nature of historical knowledge, the reliability of tradition, and the relationship between myth and history. The story's enduring power has made it a valuable thought experiment for considering how civilizations rise and fall and what factors contribute to their longevity or demise. The political implications of the Atlantis myth are equally fascinating and demonstrate how the same story can serve vastly different ideological purposes depending on the cultural context. In the 19th century, Atlantean themes were sometimes used to justify colonial expansion and racial theories, with some authors claiming that Atlanteans were a superior race who had spread civilization throughout the world. In more recent times, the myth has been adopted by various New Age and alternative history movements as evidence of ancient wisdom that mainstream science has ignored. Environmental movements have used Atlantis as a cautionary tale about ecological sustainability, while transhumanist thinkers have seen it as a symbol of technological achievement that somehow went wrong. This appropriation reveals how the emptiness at the heart of the Atlantis myth, the lack of definitive evidence, allows it to be filled with whatever meaning we need it to carry, making it a perfect vehicle for cultural projection and ideological expression across the political and philosophical spectrum. As we conclude our investigation, we are left not with answers but with deeper questions about history, about civilization, and about ourselves. The true value of the Atlantis mystery may lie not in its solution but in the questions it forces us to ask. What does it mean to be an advanced civilization? How fragile is our own technological society? What memories might be preserved in our myths and legends? How do we distinguish between historical truth and symbolic truth? These questions remain relevant regardless of whether Atlantis existed as described by Plato, and they continue to challenge our understanding of humanity's place in history and the natural world. The geological and archaeological evidence suggests that while Plato's Atlantis may not have existed exactly as described, his story likely contains echoes of real events, catastrophic floods, lost coastal settlements, and sophisticated cultures that disappeared beneath the waves or under layers of volcanic ash. The end of the last ice age was indeed a period of dramatic change and likely cultural disruption as rising seas inundated coastal areas that had been occupied for millennia. The Thera eruption definitely destroyed an advanced Bronze Age civilization in a single catastrophic event. These real events could have been combined and magnified in cultural memory to create the Atlantis story. The recent discoveries of sophisticated structures like Göbekli Tepe, dating to exactly the time Plato mentioned, suggest that human civilization may be older and more complex than we previously believed. While these findings don't prove Atlantis existed, they do indicate that our understanding of human prehistory is incomplete and that there may be surprises waiting to be discovered beneath the waves or buried beneath later settlements. The psychological and cultural impact of the Atlantis myth is undeniable and significant in its own right, regardless of the historical reality behind the story. For more than 2,000 years, this story has stimulated imagination, inspired exploration, and prompted philosophical reflection. It has served as a warning against hubris, a vision of lost perfection, and a symbol of the endless human quest for knowledge and origins. These functions are valuable regardless of the historical reality behind the myth. Stories have power to shape how we see ourselves and our world, and the Atlantis story has proven particularly potent and enduring. Its themes of achievement followed by catastrophic loss resonate with our own experiences of personal and collective setbacks, while its suggestion that greatness was once achieved offers hope that it might be achieved again. The story gives narrative form to our sense that humanity's history is longer and more complex than written records indicate, and that much may have been lost that we are only beginning to rediscover. Perhaps the most important question raised by the Atlantis mystery is how we approach such ancient traditions in the modern age. Do we dismiss them as mere fables? Do we embrace them uncritically as literal truth? Or do we engage with them as complex cultural artifacts that may contain fragments of historical memory alongside symbolic meaning? This third approach, respectful but critical engagement, allows us to appreciate the richness of such traditions while subjecting them to appropriate scrutiny. It acknowledges that our ancestors were not primitive but observant, and that their stories may preserve insights about real events, even if encoded in mythological language. It recognizes that stories can be valuable and meaningful even if they are not literally true in every detail. This approach allows us to learn from ancient traditions without abandoning critical thinking and to appreciate the wisdom they contain while remaining open to new discoveries that may clarify their origins and meaning. Now, as we bring our investigation to a close, let your mind rest on the endless mystery of human history. The oceans that cover most of our planet hold secrets we may never fully uncover, and our own past may be more complex and surprising than we imagine. The story of Atlantis, whether historical or mythological, reminds us of the fragility of civilization and the power of memory. It invites us to approach the past with both curiosity and humility, recognizing that there may be more to our story than what has been written in the history books. May this perspective grant you a sense of connection to the deep past and to the endless human quest for understanding. Thank you for journeying with us through this mystery. Sleep well and good night.